Welcome back, everybody. Happy holidays, and welcome to another episode of the Format Podcast. Thanks for stopping in with me. This may or may not be the last episode of the week, depending on how things go. Recording today, Tuesday, the 22nd of December. Might have something in line for you tomorrow, the 23rd, but again, we'll see. Might get something out before Christmas. Anyway, last episode, we talked all college football, and it was a heck of a weekend in the conference championship games. A lot of things happened since then. The college football playoff and the bowl layout has been decided. A lot of people happy, a lot of people unhappy. But today is not the day for that. With the NBA season, the new NBA season almost upon us, we are going to go ahead and talk all hoops today. And if we're talking all hoops, you know who's with me. Andy Noel, the official Format Podcast hoops analyst. He's going to come in to talk to us about some of the major storylines going into this new NBA season. So get ready for that. It's going to be awesome. But before we get to Andy, we're going to go ahead and knock out the particulars. You know what it is. If you're on social media, I'm on Twitter at Bruce F.A. Hope. That's at Bruce F.A. Hope. If you're on Instagram, I'm also there. You can find me at The Format Podcast. That's at The Format Podcast. And of course, if you want to reach out via email, that is also an avenue available to you. The address is theformatpodcast@outlook.com, theformatpodcast@outlook.com. You can always reach out to me on any one of those platforms. Let me know you like the show. Let me know you hate the show. Wouldn't like that as much, but guess what? If you tell me you hate the show, that means you're listening. So thank you for that. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's here on YouTube. And if it is here on YouTube, go ahead and make sure you click that subscribe button in the lower right corner of your screen. Also click on the bell so you're notified when new content drops and you can be on top of it, okay? Definitely make sure you keep tuning in for the new shows. We're doing the best we can to bring you the best quality sports content that I can, okay? Also, if you just like the audio version, you like to be able to listen to podcasts without having to be tied down to sitting in front of a screen watching, you want to listen to what I'm saying while you move about and do what you're doing, that's fine too. We're available to you everywhere you get your podcast: Podbean, Castbox, Google Podcasts, iTunes. And if you're on iTunes, do us a favor, go ahead, go on over there and give us that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-star rating. That 5-star rating, okay? It helps us move up in the rankings, and you wouldn't believe how much that actually helps the show, all right? So just type in The Format Podcast on any podcast platform, and you'll find us just like you'd find us on YouTube, all right? Also, make sure you give us a rating and a review, okay? Rate and review. We appreciate it greatly. And like I said, it helps a whole lot, all right? So go ahead, do that. Subscribe to us wherever you listen. Subscribe to us here on YouTube. Make sure you reach out on social media, okay? Love the interaction. Don't care if it's love or hate. Just appreciate that you're listening, all right? So with all that said, and a happy holidays to you, I'm going to mention that again. Sit back, relax, and listen up to episode 86 of The Format. Back joining us on the Format Podcast once again to talk the NBA and all things hoops. You know who it is. It's the official Format Podcast NBA analyst, Andy Noel. What's going on, Andy? How you doing?
My brother Bruce. Everything's good. Happy holidays to you, family.
Same to you. Looking kind of festive over there.
Yeah, this is my wife's setup, man. This is what she loves to do.
I hear that.
I just live here.
All right. Well, let's get right to it on the NBA front. So I think the major story I want to talk about first with you, and this is the one that really made me happy when I heard about it, was Greek freak Giannis Antetokounmpo inks the mega deal, the largest in NBA history, the 5-year extension worth that supermax $228.2 million. What's your thought on that? I love the fact that he stayed where he was and didn't take the quote unquote easy way out. I have a different word for it, but I'm not going to use that here.
First and foremost, kudos to you for being able to say his name. I've
I
only
try.
called him. The closest I've ever gotten to that is calling him Greek freak. I haven't even tried to.
Right.
But actually, yeah, kudos to the man for sticking to his guns, because that's actually been his posture
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, right?
Yep.
He's always said, I don't work out with anybody. I don't want to be with anybody. They can come here if they want to, but I'm not going over there. I was listening to Rick Bucher kind of point out that as well, in terms of he used Dirk as the reference, and he also used like Luka as the reference. These guys, given that, they look at a franchise's investment in them as something honorable and something that they should be not only proud of, but also should be looking to compensate that franchise for that investment, and also that means that also translates into loyalty.
Yeah, there's a sense of gratefulness that you kind of get from
Agreed.
the foreign player that you don't always get from the American born.
Agreed. And also, I was as I thought about it, right, you look at how he carries himself, right? He's almost the anti, and not trying to stir any waves here, but he's almost like the anti-American player, right? Where there's so much humility in how he carries himself, right? He's passionate, right? He's passionate. He's locked in. He kind of says the right thing. There was one of the interviews where they asked him about his free agency status. This is a couple of weeks ago, and he says he thinks it's disrespectful to his team for us, for the media, to be talking about that.
Wow.
Right? Well, because again, right, this is a guy who's looking at it in introspectively, right, and saying, okay, listen, you guys keep asking me this question over and over. This is going to take care of itself. We're beginning a season, right, and setting the tone. So to me, I think it was a classy move. I think it made sense for Milwaukee, right? So there's a bunch of feathers and a bunch of caps and a bunch of guys who won, right? Adam Silver wins, right? The NBA, the future player wins, right? The guy who's willing to stick it out and stay with a franchise, the small city, the smaller markets, they won, right? Giannis won. Listen, at the end of the day, that's $46 million per annum for 5 years. I don't know if you got to be a rocket scientist to take that money.
Yeah.
That's a lot of bread.
Right.
Make me that offer and put me in Alaska, and I'll play for the Alaskan League.
Right.
But but it's kudos all the way around. I am not of the mind that, okay, now, if he wins a championship, his career is solidified. I think being that team is a perennial playoff team that is a contender for the Eastern Conference championship annually, I think that in itself, given where that team came from, is an accomplishment in itself, right? It would be nice if he won a championship, but to me, I'm not saying, okay, well, he won't be a player of that caliber until he does, because again, so much has to go right unless you own clutch management. So much has to go right in order for you to be able to get the right people around you, in order to win, right? So sometimes that ball just doesn't bounce your way. But I admire the fact that he's willing to gut it out. He's partnering with the ownership, and putting his trust in them, and saying, hey, listen, this is my city, this is where I'm going to be, and let's put our chips in the middle of the table, and let's see what we can make happen.
So before we move on from this particular topic, two thoughts on that. Number one, I think part of the reason you see a different mindset in the foreign-born player, especially the European, as opposed to the European doesn't grow up in the American AAU system where coaches are kissing their butts to try and keep them on the team. In
Mm-hmm.
Europe, no matter how good you are, you practice twice a day. You got the 2 days, and also coaches have much more power and are much more hard on players over there in terms of their overall development and who runs the team.
Yep.
So you have a totally different culture, which almost forces humility in the player, no matter how great the player is. That's,
Yep.
that's my number one
Agreed.
thought. And number two, to your point about whether or not he has to win the title, I disagree with you wholeheartedly. And we talked about this offline. I believe that for the future player coming up that's in this situation, not necessarily for the future of the league, but for the future player coming up in this situation, Giannis at some point needs to win. He doesn't need to win multiple titles. He only needs to somehow pull out one. But if he doesn't win, players are going to say, no matter how much money, it's not worth it to stay in a situation where you're not winning. We've already seen LeBron basically convince players that you need to be here, there, and everywhere, hopping teams, going all over the place to try and win. Ring chase culture, whatever. And, us as members of the media, we have played a role in that, probably me more than you and other members, in terms of how much gravity they put on winning a championship and what that means in terms of a player's long-term legacy. So I get all that, but I absolutely believe that Giannis has to win at some point or another in order to, I don't want to use the term validate. I guess validate this move is probably the word for players coming up in the future that are in this position.
Yeah, that's we can agree to disagree, right? Because
Mhm.
as you and I have spoken before, right? I was listening to Brad Dougherty talk about this earlier on NBA radio. Who would have known that I would have been quoting Brad Dougherty?
Right.
But
And
he
some of our
said,
younger listeners are saying, "Who's Brad Doherty?" But
yeah,
look
well,
him up.
that's the
Right?
problem all in itself. But he said, like, we're at the point where it's like you have prognosticators who are making these assessments about these players, saying, this guy didn't win a championship, or this guy's not making it to the playoffs. How about we just watch these guys play, right? Just Giannis becoming a player, giving where from whence he came, is an accomplishment all in itself,
Mm-hmm.
right? I remember him in his rookie season, right? I remember him like being so raw, right? And no one thought that he was going to be. When did he get drafted? 17th, right? Nobody knew what he was
Late.
going to
Yeah.
be, right? Nobody knew what that player was going to be. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that he shouldn't win a championship. By all means, I think that's what the goal is. But I also am not going to take any stripes off of his shoulder, right? If he doesn't win a championship, right, and say, "Oh wow, what a wasted career," right? It's sometimes the ball doesn't bounce that way. Charles Barkley, can anybody take anything away from Charles Barkley? Charles Barkley was a dominant force, right? One
I
of the
think that's
best
just a
players.
different kind of era. But
Eh,
realistically, people do take away from him, whether it's in a joking fashion or not. Even you look at inside the NBA, you see Ernie and Shaq constantly going in on Chuck. Hey, Chuck, this conversation's for champions. You can't be in this. You know what I mean? And while you and I know that that's probably, more tongue in cheek than anything, a lot of viewers who don't know better and maybe weren't around for that era, they are measuring strictly on the basis of having won championships. But let's go ahead and move on from Greek Freak, and let's talk about the next big topic in the world in the NBA. James Harden's nonsense. Recently, there's been a report that came out, very well written article about the history of the culture with the Rockets in James Harden's tenure, and basically the culture was give James Harden whatever he wants. I mean, we even heard that if he liked the particular city that the road trip was going to, they would either stay late or go early so that he could have more time to party there. We heard things like he would be late to practice, and Russell Westbrook of all people, would, he'd be saying, "Hey, start the film," and Coach D'Antoni at the time would say, "Well, we'll just have to start it over when James gets here." Things like if they didn't want practice, then there wasn't practice. So you you gotta wonder. Okay, we understand the NBA has always been a stars league, and in today's league more than ever, players have so much power. But at what point do you have to stop kowtowing to a player, especially one who has not brought you a championship, and say, hey, for the betterment of the team, we got to rein you in? What are your thoughts on Harden and what I like to call his nonsense?
You have to look at today's culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way that the game is reported on, the way that the game is viewed today, right? The Houston is essentially they were at Harden's mercy because he was a quote unquote superstar ready to sign there, willing to sign there, right?
Mm-hmm.
They had fits and starts with Jeremy Lin and
Mm-hmm.
some other players who
Yao
they were
Ming and
trying,
Tracy
yeah,
McGrady and right.
you know, and especially entering into this new age, right, where you need a superstar on your team. They landed one, right? He's gotten all this notoriety with all these scoring championships and all these, long these scoring streaks that go on for weeks at a time, right? So he's getting all the traffic coming. He's picking up all the traffic for those guys. He's making Houston relevant every year,
Mm-hmm.
right? So at this point, right, he is the straw that stirs the drink for them. That comes with a cost. Now, the on the other side of that, anybody who's looking at what a prototypical leader would look like knows that behavior isn't necessarily, leadership. That doesn't show leadership qualities.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we understand that this is what his behavior is and this is how he's carried himself, we can't also say, well, he's a leader. He's just the best player on that team.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So because of, the way that, the way that Houston is at his mercy, he's going to basically get away with as much as he can get away with.
Mm.
Right. D'Antoni not necessarily being a taskmaster. Daryl Morey essentially being in love with him to the degree where he even looked to bring him into Philadelphia.
Let me interrupt you real quick. Daryl Morey has to be the smartest idiot I've ever heard. This guy said the other day, there's absolutely no doubt that James Harden is a better scorer than Michael Jordan.
Of course.
Just marinate on that. But carry on what you were saying.
Yeah, but listen, everything is cool these days, right? Everybody, you can get away with all of that, right? Nobody has any context. Everybody agrees, right? Yeah, if I see a guy take 6 steps and 40 dribbles to take 1 shot, that's great, right? It doesn't matter, right? This is where we are, right? But I don't point the finger at James Harden, right? It's literally like James Harden is a good player. James Harden is a franchise cornerstone by no stretch, right? He's a component, right? And I don't even know if he's a component on a winning team. He's a component. Because if you go back to, and this might be a little far back, right? But it started showing itself when they played against the Heat in the finals, and he got shut down, right? And every playoff series since, he's struggled.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like, okay, that's not by accident, right? When the games really matter, you don't really have what it takes.
You don't have that makeup, yeah.
Nah, because the reality is you can't be the focal point of an offense. You can be an ancillary player. Right. You can't really be a focal. His game isn't really a focal point. He doesn't have a focal points game. So again, my question becomes to the media, why'd you anoint him this leader and say, hey, this guy should be doing this and he should be doing that, when he's never demonstrated those characteristics anytime other than when you've expected him to, right? It's like and not every guy is going, this is another problem. Not everybody is going to win a championship. Certain guys are just there to get buckets. James Harden is there to get buckets. He is junk food. He's a McDonald's McRib, right? We have no idea what's in it, but it tastes really good. And you can't rely on.
Wouldn't know. Never had one.
For those of us who've indulged in the junk food, but yeah, there's an expectation, and I don't know sometimes if it's just they're just trying to create a narrative, or if it's actually real. But it's like James Harden is not that player. He's going to behave that way because that's what he is. He's the guy, because if there was another guy on the team, right, an alpha on the team setting the tone, James Harden would fall in line.
So the other problem here is he may be stuck, and Houston may be stuck because they can't seem to find that willing trade partner. Last couple of days, the Philadelphia 76ers have kind of been, reported as being a possible destination. Maurice shut that down. He said they have no plans to trade Ben Simmons, and you got to assume that if Ben Simmons is not in the deal, there's going to be no trade. And I personally think that it would be a terrible move to send Harden to Philly anyway, because he's going to think that's his team if he went there, especially with Daryl Morey being there. It needs to be Joel Embiid's team, and Joel Embiid would suffer tremendously with James Harden.
Agreed.
James Harden could pass the ball, but the way he monopolizes most of every shot clock, and think about it, he's not going to have too much interest in passing the ball into the low post for a dominant low post player. So,
Here's the thing. No contender should even be considering him.
I agree.
No contender should even be considering that trade. Right? He's
why?
not
a winner. What has he done to prove to you that he could put you over the top? I agree.
Hey, well, why don't you send him to Charlotte? Right? So, or listen, he might be good. Send him to New York, right? Send him to New York. He'll at least
he'll score a lot. He'll party a lot. He'll fill the seats. I mean, that's what he's good for. It seems to be.
I don't think right now is a good time because they're in the process of trying to reestablish culture, and you don't want him there.
We'll see how that works.
Some team that's kind of trying to just figure it out, like, and as I'm kind of searching through I'm trying to search through the annals of my mind, and I don't know, outside of Charlotte, I don't know how many other teams. Maybe Indiana. No, Indiana's developing culture as well. Yeah, listen, I don't have any.
Exactly.
I don't have any answers.
They're stuck. So let's move on from James Harden, and we'll kind of just see what goes on in the future. Next up, the Lakers are favorites to repeat as champs. What do you got on that? I need to see more of some of these other teams. Obviously, a lot of people are saying that Brooklyn looks like they'll come out of the East. I still think that's going to end up being a tire fire. Kyrie Irving, that's going to go south. Remember, I've said it a number of times on here with you and on Off Wax. But a lot of people see that. Obviously, Milwaukee is still right there. Boston is a team that can be dangerous. Not sure if they've got quite enough. What are your thoughts on Lakers repeating as the champs, and who's their prime opposition coming out of the East?
I want to see what they look like against Boston.
Boston has no answer for AD, I don't think.
Yes, they do.
Tristan Thompson?
Yep. Tristan Thompson. Listen, Tristan Thompson is defensively, they have an answer for him. The one component, there's a couple of pieces that don't necessarily work. I'm going to be interested to see what it looks like with Montrez playing there. I'm interested. So they looked really good in the preseason game the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Marc Gasol looked like he's, at least on the offensive end,
mm-hmm.
going to be effective. Schroeder, I'm curious about what Schroeder's going to look like, and will he accept his role?
I heard the other day he's going to be the point guard on that team, which already going to be problematic because that means you got to take the ball out of Bron's hands, and he won't like that.
They got it, but here's the thing, though, right? At the end of the day, they got a loaded squad. Right, that's one thing you won't hear. They got a loaded squad. They are a loaded squad. Kuzma looks like he's taken a leap, right? Just based on what I saw so far. But he's also been playing in a lineup where AD and LeBron aren't there. Right.
He always plays well when they're not on the floor, and he's a guy. He gets the touches, he gets the shots. He always plays well. When he gets relegated back to that third role, is where you see a lot of times he may lose interest defensively, offensively, etc.
So that's where like it's how the components come together is what I'm interested in, for me to be able to make a legitimate assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Boston got a couple of players that I didn't see. Teague, they got Teague as a backup point guard.
I did see
That's
that.
not a bad
That's
idea.
not terrible. Yeah.
Nah, not at all. Coming off the bench, that's instant. He can't run an offense, but he can score.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and um, Jason Tatum. They said Jason Tatum is actually 6'10" now.
He's still
Um,
growing?
he's a young kid, right?
Isn't he like 23?
I stopped going at 25.
Okay.
Um, so
You weirdo.
yeah. Listen, it's funny. That's a side story. I didn't really start
Mhm.
getting facial hair until I was 25.
All right, let's move on.
Let's move on. But yeah, so they have two wings that can keep LeBron James busy
Mhm.
that he has to defend. Now there's no Enes Kanter down there. Now there's a busy Tristan Thompson down there. So for me, right, I don't think Brooklyn's ready yet.
Mm.
I think Brooklyn might be one piece away. Brooklyn might be one piece away from being able to be that level of contender. KD looks good, but Kyrie's selfish playing style,
Mm.
there has to be something that offsets that. And I don't know if they have those. I don't know if those components that they currently have, will they be able to offset? Yeah, you know what? Actually, let me take that back. They could be problematic for the Lakers. That's a lot of length, and I forgot about their front line. They have shot blocking. They could be interesting.
I think for me, one of the biggest problems is you have a rookie head coach in Steve Nash, and even with D'Antoni on the bench, he's not a guy who makes adjustments in clutch situations or the playoffs anyway. So it doesn't matter. So I feel like you have a coaching issue. And again, I've told you my thoughts on Kyrie Irving. I can't buy in. Now, if I see something over the course of the season that says, okay, I was wrong here, I like this, I'll admit it. But right now, I can't really buy in. The talent is there, but making it all come together and
I don't know if they're ready. I don't know.
mm-hmm.
I don't. To be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know if they're. I don't know if you.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't put them ahead of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think one more year for the two wings, right, in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
Brad Stevens
Is
got to get over the hump at some point here. He's been to the
this?
conference finals twice now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Yeah,
Miami.
he's got to do something.
I think Miami Miami succeeded beyond where they were ready.
I agree.
Yeah, they weren't. The bubble helped a lot of people last year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's gonna. We will see. I don't think Miami's gonna have the same level of success. But staying in the West, though, I don't necessarily listen. I want to see what the Lakers look like against a year seasoned Denver,
Mm-hmm.
right? I want to see what they look like against a healthy Portland, right? So the Lakers had a walk in the park last year, right? They didn't play anybody in the playoffs, right? They basically they beat the most they lost is probably one game in a series, right?
Yeah.
So it's like they didn't play anybody. You needing to defend people and have guys understand how to play now, and the circumstances a little different. I think it's going to be interesting. It's I don't know if repeating. I think here's the thing, right? It's sexy to say that LeBron James is going to go to the finals again, right? It's sexy to just make that distinction, and nobody's gonna say no. Nobody's gonna disagree with you. But yeah, I think given those circumstances, if they would have to play Denver, Portland, in the playoffs, in the same like back to back, that's gonna take some gears. That's gonna take some tread off those tires. It just
Well,
is.
I guess we're gonna have to see. Okay, and finally, before I let you get out of here, what kind of year do you see for Steph Curry and Golden State? Do you see maybe a personal bounce back year for Steph, and then a fairly solid year for Golden State, a good year for Golden State? A lot of people, we talked about it, are picking Golden State to have a down year. What do you see from them? Obviously, Clay won't be there. He blew out his Achilles. They didn't trade Wiseman, the number 2 pick in the draft, and Andrew Wiggins is still there. Where are you on Golden State after so much recent success? Then the terrible year last year. Where are you in terms of them this season?
I think Golden State. I think Steph has a decent year. When you say bounce back year, I mean he was hurt last year, so I don't even know if he needed to bounce back. Right, he didn't play last year, but I think he has a decent year. I think I've watched him. In the preseason. He looks crisp, but he looks clean. I think to be honest with you, I think the onus is going to be on Andrew Wiggins. So Andrew Wiggins comes out with his head right. You do not want, and if Andrew, so there's a couple of different components, right? If James Wiseman comes out and James Wiseman gives you 16 points and eight rebounds in a season, that's going to be a problem. If he can be an effective scorer in the mid post and rebound, block shots, and grab rebounds, I said sorry. If he can be an effective scorer, and grab rebounds, block shots, and rim run, Steph's gonna have a really nice year. Draymond Green comes out and does what Draymond Green does, but the catalyst is going to be if Andrew Wiggins, who's a 20 point per game scorer for his career, comes out and does that, Golden State's going to be fine. I've watched their preseason. They've got a lot of length, right? You've got to watch those guys playing fast break basketball. When everybody's healthy and on the floor together, you've got to be really concerned about trying to run with those guys. My only problem where I see weaknesses, they need a couple of players on the bench. They're about it. If they get like they just got Jeremy Lin, right? They just signed Jeremy Lin, so I don't want to really say, okay, well that's gonna, he's gonna be the end all be all. I'm not gonna go there. However, I think Jeremy Lin can be a difference maker. I think they get like another maybe one or two players that solid players on the bench. I think they were looking to get. I think they were looking at getting TJ. What's his name? PJ Tucker.
Okay.
Right. I think PJ Tucker. They were looking at PJ Tucker. Right.
That would be a good fit. 3-and-D.
Wow. Right.
Really
they
good
get
fit.
him. They get him. They get one more player beyond that. Are they going to win a championship? Probably not. They're going to give somebody a headache, though, right? They're going to, again, right now you have a team. The Lakers don't want to meet that team in the playoffs. They're going to take some skin off of those guys, right? If Andrew Wiseman looks like what he's going to,
James Wiseman.
Looks like,
yeah. You just made a super player, James Wiseman.
Yeah.
Andrew Wiggins, right?
If James Wiseman can block shots, grab rebounds, and he has like a nice touch around the what do you call it? Like a nice mid-range jump shot.
Yeah. Sky's the limit for him.
It's gonna be interesting to say the least.
All right, Andy. Well, that does it for our NBA segment today, man. Thanks for coming on, taking the time to join us. Really appreciate it. Happy holidays to you and yours, man. And we'll see you next time.
Bruce, it's always a pleasure. Love to talk hoops with you, man. Enjoy your holiday season as well.
You too, man. Appreciate it.